I am Sarah Jenkins, 48 years old, and my husband told me he was going on a business trip, but I found out he was taking his ex-girlfriend to Paris for our 10th anniversary. Before I tell you about how I left them both trembling in fear in a hotel suite, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far this story travels. The hallway of the Ritz Paris smells like old money. It's a scent of beeswax polish, fresh lilies, and something cold and metallic that I can't quite place. Maybe that last part was just the taste of fear in the back of my throat. The carpet was so thick it swallowed the sound of my heels. It was midnight in Paris, but inside my head, it was screaming loud enough to shatter the crystal chandeliers above us. I stood in front of room 305. The honeymoon suite. The very suite I had pinned on my vision board 3 years ago. The suite Mark had laughed at, telling me it was a waste of money, that only tourists and fools stayed at the Ritz. Well, apparently, he didn't mind being a fool if he was with her. Beside me stood David Sterling. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark wool coat that probably cost more than my delivery van. He looked calm. Terrifyingly calm. His face was a mask of stone, but I saw his hand trembling just slightly as he held the digital keycard duplicator. He was the husband of the woman currently laughing inside that room with my husband. We could hear them. That was the worst part. Through the heavy oak door, the muffled sound of clinking glass drifted out. Then, a laugh. A high, tinkling laugh that sounded like wind chimes. It was Jessica. And then, a deeper voice, booming and confident, the voice Mark used when he was closing a deal or lying to my face. To us, Mark's voice came through the wood. And to finally living the life we deserve. My stomach lurched. I felt bile rise in my throat. I reached out and touched the cold brass handle of the door, my fingers shaking. David looked down at me. His eyes were tired, rimmed with red, but hard as flint. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. We were two strangers who had been thrown together by the cruelest kind of betrayal, bonded by a shared mission to burn their fantasy world to the ground. I thought about the last 10 years. I thought about the flour in my hair, the burns on my arms from the ovens, the late nights balancing the books so Mark could drive his Mercedes. I thought about the trust. The blind, stupid trust. Ready? David whispered. It wasn't really a question. It was an ignition switch. I took a deep breath, inhaling that scent of lilies and betrayal. Do it, I whispered back. David raised the keycard. He didn't just swipe it, he held it there like a weapon. The little light on the lock blinked from red to green. Beep. That sound. That single, electronic beep. It was the sound of my marriage ending. But it was also the sound of my life beginning. As the mechanism clicked open and I pushed the heavy door inward, time seemed to warp. I wasn't just walking into a hotel room, I was walking back through the nightmare that had led me here. To understand why I was standing outside that hotel room in Paris with a stranger, you have to understand who I was 2 weeks ago. I wasn't this woman in a designer dress holding a vengeance plan. I was just Sarah. Sarah the baker. Sarah the wife. I own a small chain of artisan bakeries in Seattle called Legacy Loaves. It was my grandmother's business originally. She started it with nothing but a sourdough starter and a dream, and when she passed, she left it to me. I spent the last 15 years waking up at 3 a.m., smelling like yeast and cinnamon, kneading dough until my knuckles were swollen. It's hard work. It's honest work. And it pays well if you manage it right. But to my husband, Mark, it was just cute. Mark is a wealth manager. He runs a boutique investment fund. He wears Italian suits, drives a shiny black sedan, and talks about market volatility and asset allocation at dinner parties. For years, I looked at him with stars in my eyes. I thought he was so smart, so sophisticated. I was the girl with flour on her apron, and he was the man who understood the world. 2 weeks ago, I was in our kitchen, frosting a sample batch of cupcakes for a wedding order. It was a Tuesday. Mark came home late, as usual. He tossed his briefcase on the counter, right next to my cooling rack, almost knocking over a tray of lemon tarts. "Hey, honey," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. "Dinner is in the oven. Pot roast." He didn't look at me. He was typing furiously on his phone. "Not hungry. Had a late lunch with a client." "Mark," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Do you know what next week is?" He stopped typing, but his thumb hovered over the screen. He sighed, a long, dramatic exhale that made me feel like an annoying child asking for candy. "Tuesday? Garbage day?" "It's our 10th anniversary," I said, the excitement dimming a little. 10 years, Mark. The 10th anniversary. He finally looked up. His eyes were blue, cold, and distracted. "Right. Of course. 10 years. I was thinking, I rushed on, trying to capture his attention before it drifted back to his screen. "I've saved up enough from the bakery's holiday rush. We could finally do it. Paris. The trip we talked about on our honeymoon. I found a deal on flights, and I was looking at hotels." Mark laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was a short, sharp bark. "Paris? Sarah, be realistic. I can't go to Paris right now." "Why not?" "You haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. The fund is doing well, isn't it?" "The fund is complicated," he snapped. "I'm in the middle of a massive merger for a client. It's delicate. If I leave for even 2 days, the whole thing could collapse. Millions of dollars, Sarah. Not that you'd understand, dealing with muffins." That stung. It always stung when he belittled my work. "My muffins paid for the new roof last year, Mark," I reminded him quietly. He rolled his eyes. "That's pocket change compared to what I'm dealing with. Look, I'm sorry about the anniversary. We'll do something local. Dinner at that steakhouse you like. But Paris is off the table." I felt a lump form in my throat. I had wanted this so badly. I wanted us to reconnect. Lately, Mark had been distant. He guarded his phone like a dragon guarding gold. He spent hours in his home office with the door locked. I told myself it was work stress. I told myself I was being paranoid. "Okay," I said, trying to be the supportive wife. The good wife. "I understand. Work comes first. Thank you for not being difficult," he said, and the way he said it made me feel small. He walked over and kissed me on the forehead. His lips were dry and he pulled away quickly. "I have to go catch up on emails." "Don't wait up." He went into his office and locked the door. I heard the click of the deadbolt. Who locks their office door in their own home? That night, I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling. Mark was still working. Or so he said. I felt a profound sense of loneliness. We were living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, but we were miles apart. I wondered if I was boring him. I wasn't a supermodel. I had laugh lines. I had a few extra pounds from tasting my own pastries. I wasn't glamorous. I remembered his ex-girlfriend, Jessica. They had dated in college and for a few years after. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, blonde, effortlessly chic. She came from money, old Seattle money. She didn't work, she chaired committees. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, never let me forget her. Jessica had such grace, Eleanor would say over Thanksgiving dinner, while I was sweating over the turkey. She knew which fork to use. And she was so slim. I shook the thought away. Mark had chosen me. He married me. Jessica was ancient history. She was married too, to some tech guy. The next morning, Mark was in a surprisingly good mood. He was whistling as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. Change of plans, he announced. I have to go to New York for that merger. Just for a few days. I'll be leaving on Thursday. Thursday? I frowned. That's our anniversary. I know, babe. I know. It sucks. But this is the final push. Once this deal closes, I promise, I'll make it up to you. Maybe we can do Paris next year. Next year. It was always next year. Okay, I said, forcing a smile. I'll pack your bag. No, he said, too quickly. I mean, no, don't worry. I'll pack. You have the bakery to run. You're busy. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a second, I saw something in his eyes. I thought it was guilt. Now I know it was pity. He pitied me for being so gullible. You're the best wife, Sarah, he said smoothly. I don't deserve you. He was right. He didn't. He left on Thursday morning. He kissed me goodbye at the door, the Uber waiting in the driveway. I'll call you when I land in New York, he promised. I love you, I said. Love you too, he replied, already looking at his phone. I watched the car drive away, feeling a heavy stone in my chest. I decided to distract myself. I would deep clean the house. It was something I did when I was anxious. I started with the kitchen, scrubbing the grout until my fingers ached. Then the living room. Finally, I went to his office. The door was unlocked. He must have forgotten in his rush to leave. I walked in. It was a mess. Mark was meticulous about his appearance, but his workspace was chaotic. Papers everywhere. Coffee cups with mold growing in them. I sighed and started gathering the trash. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear. I respected his privacy. I was just trying to be helpful. I was wiping down the dust on his mahogany desk when I moved a stack of investment brochures and saw it. His old iPad. It was an older model, one he said he had stopped using years ago. It was plugged into a charger behind the monitor. The screen lit up when I bumped the mouse. It wasn't locked. I stared at the screen. It was open to his email. But not his work email. It was a private Gmail account I didn't know he had. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. A private email? Why would he need a private email? I told myself to walk away. Don't look, Sarah. Trust him. But my hand moved on its own. I sat down in his leather chair, the leather squeaking under me. The inbox was full of notifications. But one subject line, right at the top, made the world stop spinning. Delta Airlines, confirmation for flight DL402 SEA to CDG. SEA to CDG. Seattle to Charles de Gaulle. Paris. He wasn't going to New York. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely tap the screen. I opened the email. There, in black and white, was the itinerary. Departure, today. Destination, Paris. Passenger 1, Mark Jenkins. Passenger 2, Jessica Sterling. The air left the room. I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had punched me in the solar plexus. Jessica. Jessica. The name echoed in my skull. Not a client. Not a colleague. His ex-girlfriend. The one his mother adored. The one who was so slim and so graceful. I scrolled down, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. They weren't just going to Paris. They were flying first class. The tickets cost $12,000. $12,000. Mark had told me we couldn't afford to fix the delivery van's transmission last month. He told me money was tight because of the market downturn. There was more. A hotel confirmation. The Ritz Paris. Grand Jardin Suite. A dinner reservation at Le Jules Verne, the restaurant inside the Eiffel Tower. It was my dream trip. Every single detail. He had taken my dream, the one I had told him about late at night, the one I had saved for, and he had given it to her. I sat there, frozen. The betrayal was so physical it hurt. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the cruelty. He had looked me in the eye this morning, on our 10th anniversary, and lied without blinking. He had called me selfish for wanting a vacation, while he was planning a 5-star getaway with his ex-lover. I started clicking through other emails. It was a treasure trove of deceit. "Can't wait to be inside you again," one email from Jessica read. "He's so boring, isn't he? Does she still smell like dough?" "She's clueless," Mark had replied. "Don't worry, baby. The plan is in motion. Once we get back from Paris, I'll drop the bomb. I just need to secure the assets first." Secure the assets. What did that mean? I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I needed to know more. But suddenly, the iPad screen flashed. A notification from Find My. He was at the airport. He was checking in. I needed to think. I couldn't just cry. Crying wouldn't solve this. Crying wouldn't undo the last 10 years of lies. I stood up, my legs wobbly. I looked around the office, this sanctuary of his lies. I took my phone out and started taking pictures of everything on the screen. Every email. Every reservation. Every nasty exchange where they mocked me. "Does she suspect?" Jessica asked in one thread. "Sarah? Never. She trusts me blindly. She's a good little worker bee," Mark wrote back. Worker bee. That broke something inside me. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a white-hot rage. I was a worker bee? Fine. He was about to find out that bees have stingers. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I looked at the flight confirmation again. Jessica Sterling. I opened a new tab on my phone and searched for her name. Jessica Sterling, Seattle. Her Instagram popped up immediately. It was public, of course. Photos of her at galas, photos of her with expensive handbags, photos of her doing yoga on a paddleboard. And photos of her husband. David Sterling. I clicked on his tagged profile. David Sterling, CEO of Sterling Cybersecurity. He looked kind in his photos. A bit serious. In one picture, he was looking at Jessica with adoration, while she was looking at the camera. I recognized that look. It was the look of a spouse who loves more than they are loved. I found his business website. There was a contact email. I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. Then I began to type. Subject: regarding your wife's trip to Paris. Dear Mr. Sterling, I don't know you, but I believe we have a problem in common. My husband, Mark Jenkins, just told me he is going to New York for business. However, I have just found a flight confirmation for him and your wife, Jessica, departing for Paris today at 4 p.m. They are staying at the Ritz. I have attached the screenshots. I am not crazy. I am just a wife who has had enough. If you want to talk, here is my number. I hit send. My finger hovered over the screen, trembling. What if he didn't believe me? What if they had an open marriage? What if he thought I was a scammer? My phone rang 12 minutes later. The number was local. I picked it up. Hello? My voice sounded raspy. Is this Sarah? A man's voice. Deep, steady, but tight with tension. Yes. Is this David? I'm at the Starbucks on 4th and Pike. Can you meet me in 20 minutes? I'm on my way. I didn't change my clothes. I was wearing jeans and a flour-dusted sweater. I didn't care. I grabbed my purse, the iPad, just in case, and drove downtown like a woman possessed. When I walked into the Starbucks, I spotted him immediately. He looked exactly like his photos, but tired. He was wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, looking like a tech guy on a weekend, but his posture was rigid. He was staring at a laptop screen. I approached the table. David? He looked up. His eyes scanned my face, looking for, what? Hysteria? Deceit? He must have seen the raw pain there because his expression softened slightly. He stood up and offered me a hand. Sarah. Thank you for coming. We sat down. He didn't offer me coffee. He turned his laptop around. I got your email, he said. I ran a trace on the header. It's legitimate. And the screenshots, they match the credit card alert I got this morning. You knew? I asked, surprised. I suspected, David said, rubbing his temples. Jessica has been distant. She told me she was going to a silent yoga retreat in Sedona. No phones allowed. That's why she wouldn't be answering calls. Mark said New York. Merger. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. They really think we're idiots. I'm a cybersecurity expert, Sarah, David said, his voice dropping an octave. I protect banks from hackers. I track digital footprints for a living. And yet, I missed the breach in my own living room. What do we do? I asked. Do we call them? Confront them? David shook his head slowly. No. If we call them now, they'll just lie. They'll say it's a coincidence, or they'll come up with some story. And they'll hide the assets. Assets? I asked. Mark mentioned that in an email. Secure the assets. David looked at me, his gaze intense. Sarah, how involved are you in your family finances? Not very, I admitted, feeling a flush of shame. Mark handles the investments. I run the bakery. I deposit my profits into our joint account, and he manages the bills and the retirement funds. David grimaced. It was a look of pity mixed with frustration. You need to log into your accounts. Now. I don't know the passwords to the investment portal. Mark keeps them. David turned his laptop back to himself. What's his email address? The one you found on the iPad? I told him. David's fingers flew across the keyboard. He wasn't hacking in a movie sense, no green code raining down, but he was fast. If he's using Family Cloud, and you have the iPad, wait. Is the iPad connected to the cafe Wi-Fi? Yes, I connected it before I left the house. Okay. I can bypass the two-factor authentication if I mirror the device. He did something technical that went over my head. Within 2 minutes, he had a banking portal open on his screen. Is this it? He asked. I looked at the logo. Yes. That's our bank. David clicked on the Accounts tab. He went silent. His face went pale. What? I asked, panic rising in my chest. What is it? Sarah, David said softly. Look. He turned the screen. I looked. I expected to see our savings. I expected to see the retirement fund we had been building for 10 years. The balance was $42.18. That's impossible, I whispered. There should be over $200,000 in there. My bakery profits, the inheritance from my grandmother. Look at the transaction history, David pointed. Withdrawal. 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 Wire transfer to M&J Holdings LLC. Wire transfer to Cayman Trust. He had drained us dry. Over the last 6 months, he had systematically emptied every single account. But the mortgage, I stammered. The house, the bakery building. I own those free and clear. Grandma left them to me. David clicked on another tab. Loans. There was a new mortgage on my house. And a commercial lien on the bakery. Total value, $1.5 million. He took out a HELOC, David said, his voice cold as ice. And a business loan against your bakery. But he can't. I cried out, causing a few people in the coffee shop to turn and look. I lowered my voice to a hiss. Those deeds are in my name only. He needs my signature. David clicked on a document icon. A PDF opened. It was a loan agreement. At the bottom, there was a signature. Sarah Jenkins. It looked like my signature. But I had never signed it. He forged it, David said. He committed fraud. Massive, felonious fraud. I felt the room spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from fainting. Why? Why would he do this? David typed another query. Let's see where the money went. M&J Holdings, here we go. International wire transfer. Recipient, Chateau Immobiliers, Provence. He turned the screen to me again. It was a real estate listing. A gorgeous, sun-drenched villa in the south of France. He didn't just buy a vacation, Sarah, David said. He bought a new life. He's using your money, your bakery, your grandmother's legacy, to buy a mansion for him and my wife. He's going to leave me, I realized. The words tasted like ash. He's going to come back from this trip, serve me divorce papers, and leave me with millions of dollars in debt while he retires in France with Jessica. And he thinks he's smart, David said. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He thinks he's untouchable. I looked at David. I saw the same fire in his eyes that I felt burning in my gut. We weren't just sad spouses anymore. We were victims of a crime. I want to kill him, I said. I didn't mean it literally, but the rage was blinding. No, David said firmly. That's too quick. And too messy. He closed the laptop with a snap. We're going to destroy him. We're going to take everything back. And we're going to do it while they're clinking champagne glasses in Paris. How? I asked. David pulled out a black credit card. I have a flight to catch. Delta Flight DL402. The same one they are on. There are still seats in first class. He looked at me. Do you have your passport? Yes. I was hoping for a surprise trip. Well, David stood up, buttoning his coat. Surprise. Pack a bag, Sarah. We're going to Paris. The drive to the airport was a blur. I stopped at home for exactly 10 minutes. I grabbed my passport, threw some clothes into a carry-on, and grabbed the red folder where I kept the original deeds to the bakery, the ones that proved the property was mine before the marriage. I met David at the international terminal. He had already bought the tickets. How much do I owe you? I asked, reaching for my wallet, even though I knew my cards might be declined thanks to Mark. Don't insult me, David said. This is on me. Consider it an investment in justice. We checked in. David had connections, or maybe just a terrifying amount of frequent flyer miles, because we breezed through security. He led me to the Delta Sky Club lounge. Stay here, he said, positioning me behind a large decorative plant near the back. They haven't boarded yet. They'll be coming in here for free drinks. I sat there, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. 10 minutes later, they walked in. Seeing them in person was 1,000 times worse than the emails. Mark looked happy. He was wearing his deal-closing suit, a navy blue number that I had picked out for him. He had his arm around Jessica's waist. Jessica looked stunning, I hate to admit. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere travel set and oversized sunglasses. She looked like a movie star. She looked like money. My money. They sat at the bar, not 30 feet from us. 2 mimosas, Mark told the bartender loudly. Top shelf champagne only. We're celebrating. What are we celebrating, baby? Jessica cooed, running a manicured hand down his arm. Freedom, Mark grinned. And the end of bad bakery smells. I gasped. David's hand instantly clamped over my forearm, grounding me. His grip was warm and solid. "Steady," he whispered in my ear. "Don't engage. Not yet. Let them have their drink. It'll be the last good one they taste." "He forged my signature," I whispered back, my voice shaking with fury. "He stole my grandmother's legacy." "I know," David said. "And I've already sent the digital trail to my forensic accountant. By the time we land in Paris, we'll have a draft complaint ready for the FBI. FBI? Wire fraud. Bank fraud. Identity theft. Across state lines and international borders," David recited. "Mark isn't just a cheater, Sarah. He's a felon. And Jessica, if she signed any of those transfer documents, she's an accomplice." Watching them laugh, watching Mark kiss her neck right there in the airport lounge, I felt a shift. The sadness that had been weighing me down for hours finally broke. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I looked at David. "I don't just want my money back. I want to humiliate them. I want them to feel what I felt." David smirked. It was a dark, dangerous smile. "Oh, we will. We're going to let them check into that suite. We're going to let them think they've won. And then we're going to walk in and detonate the bomb." "Flight DL-402 to Paris, now boarding first class," the announcer called. Mark and Jessica stood up. They clinked their glasses one last time and headed for the gate, oblivious to the fact that their executioners were right behind them. We waited until the final boarding call. We didn't want to run into them in the jet bridge. David handed the gate agent our boarding passes. She scanned them. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Sterling, Ms. Jenkins. Seats 1A and 1B. First class on an international flight is a different world. It's individual pods, lie-flat beds, and privacy dividers." Mark and Jessica were in seats 4A and 4B, still first class, but further back. We were in the very front. We slipped into our seats quickly. The privacy walls were high enough that unless they walked all the way to the front to use the restroom, they wouldn't see us. As the plane taxied, I stared out the window at the gray Seattle rain. I thought about my employees at the bakery. Mrs. Higgins, who had worked for my grandmother. The young college students who relied on their paychecks. If Mark defaulted on those fraudulent loans, the bank would seize the bakery. They would lose their jobs. This wasn't just about me. It was about protecting my people. Once we were at cruising altitude, the cabin lights dimmed. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark forging my name. David leaned over the divider. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "Drink this," he handed me a glass of water. "Listen to me. Mark is arrogant. He's sloppy. He left the iPad logged in. He used a traceable IP address to move the money. He thinks you're stupid, Sarah. That's his biggest weakness. He underestimates you." "Everyone underestimates me," I said bitterly. "I'm just the baker." "You run a business," David corrected. "You manage inventory, payroll, logistics. You're tougher than he is. He moves numbers on a screen. You build things with your hands." I looked at David. "Why are you doing this? You could have just filed for divorce and been done with her." David looked down at his wedding ring. He twisted it on his finger. "Jessica and we tried for years to have kids. It didn't happen. I thought we were working through the grief together. I supported her hobbies, her trips, her charity work. I thought she was just finding herself." He looked up, his eyes full of pain. "She wasn't finding herself. She was looking for someone else. She used my money to fund her affair with your husband. She mocked me to him. I saw the texts too, Sarah. She called me a boring ATM." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be. Being boring made me rich. And being an ATM means I have the resources to bury them." He took a sip of his scotch. I'm not doing this for revenge, exactly. I'm doing it for dignity. If I just let them get away with it, I'm the fool they think I am. If I stop them, I reclaim my life. Reclaiming the narrative, I said. Exactly. The flight was 9 hours. 9 hours of sitting in the dark, plotting. David spent the time typing on his laptop, finalizing the legal documents with his team back in the States via the in-flight Wi-Fi. I spent the time rehearsing what I would say. Hello, Mark. Surprise, honey. Get out of my room. When the captain announced our descent into Paris, the sun was rising. The sky was a bruised purple and pink. It should have been romantic. Instead, it looked like a bruise. We deplaned last. David insisted. Let them get through customs first. We don't want a scene at the baggage claim. We watched from a distance as they grabbed their Louis Vuitton bags. Mark kissed Jessica on the forehead. They looked so smug. They hopped into a pre-arranged limousine. David and I took a separate car. A black Mercedes van. To the Ritz, please, David told the driver. And step on it. Paris passed by the window. The Eiffel Tower. The Seine. The cafes opening for the morning. I felt detached from it all. I wasn't a tourist. I was a soldier on a mission. We arrived at the Ritz 10 minutes after them. David had already called the hotel manager, an old friend of his, apparently. Monsieur Sterling, the concierge greeted us nervously. This is a most unusual situation. Did they check in? David asked, his voice low. Yes, sir. Just now. They are in the Grand Jardin suite. Room 305. Excellent. Is the second key ready? The concierge hesitated. Sir, technically, the reservation is in Mr. Jenkins' name. Paid for with funds stolen from Mrs. Jenkins, David pointed to me. And the deposit for the incidentals was put on a card linked to my account by my wife. So, legally, we are the paying parties. David slid a black Amex card across the marble counter. Authorization for any damages. And I assure you, there might be some emotional damages. The concierge looked at me, then at David. He nodded discreetly and slid 2 keycards across the counter. Room 305. Third floor. Thank you, Jean-Pierre, David said. We walked to the elevator. The golden doors closed, sealing us in. This is it, I said, my hand shaking again. Game time, David said. He checked his watch. It's 10 a.m. They're probably ordering champagne and getting comfortable. The elevator dinged at the 3rd floor. We walked down the long, silent corridor. The scent of lilies and beeswax grew stronger. And that brings us back to the door. The beep. The handle turning. The push. The door swung open. The room was bathed in golden morning light. It was magnificent. A 4-poster bed, velvet drapes, a balcony overlooking the garden. Mark was standing by the balcony doors, wearing a plush white hotel robe. He held a bottle of Dom Perignon. Jessica was sitting on the bed, laughing, wearing nothing but expensive lingerie. They both froze. The glass bottle slipped from Mark's hand. Smash. Champagne and glass exploded across the antique rug. Sarah? Mark squeaked. His voice was an octave higher than usual. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. A ghost in a trench coat. I stepped into the room, my heels crunching on the broken glass. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just smiled. It was the coldest smile I had ever worn. Happy anniversary, Mark, I said. I hope you saved me a glass. Happy anniversary, Mark, I said. I hope you saved me a glass. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It hung in the air like the scent of the expensive perfume Jessica was wearing, A scent I realized with a sickening jolt was the same one I'd smelled on Mark's shirts for months. Mark's face was a study in absolute terror. His eyes darted from me to the broken champagne bottle on the floor, then to the open door, as if calculating the physics of jumping off the third-floor balcony. "Sarah," he choked out again, clutching the lapels of his robe tighter. What are you doing here?" Jessica, to her credit, recovered faster than he did. She pulled the silk sheet up to her chin, her eyes narrowing. "This is a private suite," she hissed, her voice dripping with entitlement. "Get out before I call security." That was the moment David stepped fully into the room. He moved with a slow, deliberate weight, closing the door behind us with a soft click. He didn't look at Mark. He looked straight at his wife. He raised his phone, the red recording light blinking steadily. "Hello, Jessica," David said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "How is the silent yoga retreat in Sedona? The energy here in Paris seems remarkably similar." Jessica turned pale. All the blood drained from her face, leaving her looking like a wax statue. "David," she stammered. I can explain." "Explain?" David laughed, a dark, dry sound. "Explain why you're in a $3,000 a night suite with Sarah's husband? Explain why you've spent $40,000 of our joint savings in the last 3 weeks booking wellness treatments that were actually deposits for a villa in Provence?" Mark stepped forward, trying to regain some semblance of control. He put on his business voice, that condescending, mansplaining tone he used when I asked about our finances. "Now, look here, David. Let's all calm down. This is a complicated situation. We're all adults. We can discuss this civilly." I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. It was wild, untamed. "Civilly?" I stepped closer to him. "You forged my signature on $1 million loan, Mark. You mortgaged my grandmother's bakery, my legacy, to buy a love nest for your mistress. Is that civil?" Mark flinched as if I'd slapped him. "I didn't, it's an investment strategy, Sarah. You don't understand high finance. The bakery needed leverage to expand. I was doing it for us." "For us?" I screamed. The control I had been holding on to snapped. "You booked a one-way ticket for yourself. I saw the emails, Mark. I saw the texts. She still smells like dough. Remember that one?" I saw the realization hit him. He knew. He knew I had seen everything. His arrogance crumbled, replaced by a desperate, slimy panic. "Sarah, baby," he started, reaching a hand out towards me. "You're misinterpreting. It was just talk. Locker room talk. Jessica, she means nothing. It's a midlife crisis thing. I was going to end it. I love you." I stared at his hand. The hand I had held for 10 years. The hand that wore the wedding ring I had paid for. "Don't," Jessica shrieked from the bed. "Don't you dare throw me under the bus, you coward. You told me you hated her. You told me she was a frumpy, boring anchor dragging you down." "She is." Mark yelled back, spinning on her. "But she controls the assets, Jessica. Use your brain." The room fell silent again. Mark froze, realizing what he had just admitted out loud. He slowly turned back to me, his face pale. "I didn't mean that," he whispered. I looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. Total, absolute clarity. "I know you meant it," I said softly. "But here is the thing about frumpy anchors, Mark. When you cut them loose, you tend to drift away. And you are drifting straight into a hurricane." David stepped forward. "We aren't here to argue about your love life," he said, checking his watch. "We are here to clarify the bill." "The bill?" Mark frowned, confused. "You see," David said, pulling a piece of paper from his pocket. "This room. It was booked under your name, Mark, but the credit card on file for the deposit? That was Jessica's card. My card. The one I pay off every month. So? Jessica snapped. I'll pay you back. No, you won't, David said. Because I've just reported that card stolen. And unauthorized use of a stolen credit card is a crime in France. A serious one. You wouldn't, Jessica gasped. I already did, David smiled thinly. And since the primary guest, Mark, cannot produce the card used for the booking, and since I, the actual cardholder, am standing here declaring fraud, well. There was a sharp knock at the door. Bang. 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 Hotel security, a deep voice boomed. Ouvrez la porte, s'il vous plaît. Mark looked at the door, then at me. Sarah, please. Tell them it's a mistake. If this gets out, my clients, the merger, my reputation. I looked at the man who had promised to love and cherish me. I looked at the broken champagne on the floor. Your reputation? I asked. Mark, you don't have a reputation anymore. You have a criminal record pending. I walked over to the door. I put my hand on the latch. I looked back at him one last time. Happy anniversary, I whispered. And I opened the door. Part 8, The Public Humiliation Eviction from Paradise. Approximate 1,500 words. 3 security guards stood there, flanked by the hotel manager, Jean-Pierre. They looked immaculate in their uniforms, which only made Mark's state of undress look even more pathetic. Monsieur Sterling? The manager asked, looking at David. Right here, David said. These 2 individuals have fraudulently used my financial information to access this suite. I would like them removed immediately. Of course, Jean-Pierre nodded. He looked at Mark. Monsieur, you have 5 minutes to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. You can't do this. Mark sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. I am a Diamond Medallion member. I demand to speak to the owner. The owner does not appreciate fraud, monsieur, Jean-Pierre said coldly. 5 minutes. Or the police nationale will assist you. The next 10 minutes were the most satisfying reality TV show I have ever watched. Mark and Jessica had to scramble to get dressed. There is no dignity in trying to pull on skinny jeans while a French security guard taps his foot impatiently by the door. Jessica was crying, smearing her mascara everywhere, screaming at David that he was a monster and a control freak. David just filmed it all. For the divorce lawyer, he said simply. When they were finally shoved out into the hallway, they looked like wrecks. Mark's shirt was unbuttoned, his expensive shoes untied. Jessica was dragging her Louis Vuitton suitcase, one of the wheels squeaking loudly, a poetic sound of failure. We have nowhere to go. Jessica wailed as we reached the lobby. David, please. Blocks my cards? I have no cash. You have Mark, David said, gesturing to my husband. He's a financial genius, remember? I'm sure he has a plan. We followed them down to the lobby. The Ritz lobby is a place of hushed whispers and clinking teacups. When Mark and Jessica stumbled out of the elevator, followed by security, every head turned. This is a mistake. Mark shouted to no one in particular, trying to save face. I am suing this hotel. Sir, please keep your voice down, a guard said, gripping Mark's elbow. Don't touch me. Mark yanked his arm away. That was a mistake. The guard didn't take kindly to that. Within seconds, Mark was pinned against the marble concierge desk. The sound of his breath wheezing against the cold stone was audible. Get them out, Jean-Pierre ordered. They were unceremoniously escorted to the revolving doors. I stood at the top of the grand staircase with David, watching them being ejected onto the place bottom. It was raining outside. A cold, grey Parisian drizzle. Mark stood on the sidewalk, looking back at the hotel. He saw me through the glass doors. He raised his hands in a gesture of pleading. I turned my back on him. Hungry? David asked me. Starving, I said. Let's go get some breakfast. I know a place that serves the best croissants. And unlike them, we can pay for it. We didn't stay at the Ritz. David had made a point of canceling the room entirely so they couldn't try to sneak back in. We moved to a smaller, boutique hotel on the left bank. It was charming, quiet, and felt like a sanctuary. But the war wasn't over. We knew Mark well enough to know he wouldn't give up. He had his own credit cards. He had his arrogance. He would try to regroup. He's going to try to book another hotel, David said as we sat in a cafe an hour later, watching the rain streak the windows. He'll think this is just a hiccup. He'll try to use his corporate card. The one linked to the business account? I asked. The business account that is technically secured by my bakery? Exactly, David said. He pulled out his laptop. Ready for phase 2? Phase 2. The financial nuke, David said. We need to make sure that every time he swipes a card in this city, the only thing he gets is a declined slip. I sipped my coffee. It tasted like victory. Do it. Part 9, The Financial Nuke, Debt in the City of Lights, approximate 1600 words. Paris is an expensive city to be poor in. It is even more expensive when you are trying to pretend you are rich. We tracked them. It wasn't hard. Mark posted a photo on Instagram an hour later, a picture of a glass of wine at a bistro near the Louvre. Caption, minor setback with the hotel. Moving to the Four Seasons. Resilience is key to success. Hashtag Paris, hashtag hustle. He is unbelievable, I shook my head. Resilience? He just got kicked out of the Ritz. He's putting on a show for his investors, David said. He needs to appear successful so they don't pull their money. But he doesn't know the ground has already crumbled beneath him. While Mark was posting hashtags, I was on the phone with my bank in Seattle. Yes, this is Sarah Jenkins, I told the fraud department representative. I am reporting suspicious activity. Yes, my husband, Mark Jenkins. I have reason to believe he has compromised our accounts. I have evidence of forged signatures on loan documents. I need you to freeze everything. Joint accounts, credit cards, the helic. Yes, immediately. Because I was the primary deed holder on the collateral, the bakery and the house, the bank took it very seriously. We are freezing the assets pending an investigation, Mrs. Jenkins, the agent said. This means no transactions will be authorized on any linked card starting now. I looked at David. He gave me a thumbs up. He had done the same with his and Jessica's accounts. Now, David said. We wait. We didn't have to wait long. Around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. Sarah, pick up the phone. There's a mistake with the bank. My card isn't working. I need you to call them and authorize a charge. I ignored it. 5 minutes later. Sarah. This isn't funny. We are at a restaurant. The waiter is threatening to call the police. Pick up. I showed the phone to David. Looks like lunch is over. Let's go see, David suggested. I believe that bistro is just a few blocks from here. I hesitated. Do we really need to see it? Sarah, David said gently. You spent 10 years saving coupons while he spent your money on suits. You deserve to see him realize he is broke. We took a taxi. We didn't go inside the bistro, we stood across the street, under the awning of a bookstore. We could see them through the window. Mark was sweating. He was frantically swiping card after card on the waiter's portable machine. Swipe. Shake head. Swipe. Shake head. Jessica was digging through her purse, pulling out cards. Swipe. Shake head. The waiter, a stern-faced Parisian man with zero patience for American nonsense, was crossing his arms. He pointed to the bill. He pointed to the door. Then he pointed to the phone. Mark was shouting now. I could see his mouth moving. Do you know who I am? 2 police officers, gendarmes, walked into the bistro. My heart skipped a beat. You called them? I asked David. No, David said. The restaurant did. In France, grivolerie, dining and dashing or inability to pay, is taken very seriously. We watched as the officers approached the table. Mark tried to charm them. He flashed his watch. He pointed at his suit. The officers looked unimpressed. They asked for identification. Then, they asked for payment. Mark turned out his pockets. Nothing. Jessica was sobbing again, hiding her face in her hands. Finally, Mark had to do the unthinkable. He took off his watch, his prized Rolex Submariner that cost more than my first car, and placed it on the table. The waiter looked at it, skeptical. There was a heated discussion. Eventually, the waiter took the watch, wrote something on a piece of paper, and shooed them out. They walked out of the restaurant into the rain. No umbrella. No limo. Just 2 wet, miserable people who had just paid for a Caesar salad with a Rolex. Mark's phone was glued to his ear. My phone rang. He's calling you, David said. I know. Answer it. Put it on speaker. I slid the bar to answer. Hello, Mark. Sarah. He was screaming so loud the microphone distorted. What the hell did you do? My cards are dead. All of them. I just lost my Rolex. Fix this. Call the bank right now and tell them it's a mistake. It's not a mistake, Mark, I said calmly. I reported the fraud. The bank knows about the forged signatures. They know about the fake loans. They've frozen everything to protect my assets. Your assets? Mark laughed hysterically. I made you. You're nothing without me. You're just a baker. I will ruin you. I will sue you for every penny. You can't sue me, Mark, I said. You can't even afford a lawyer. You can't even afford a baguette. I'll call my mother, he threatened. She'll fix this. She has money. Go ahead, I said. Call Eleanor. I'm sure she's dying to hear how her perfect son is currently wandering the streets of Paris like a stray dog. I hung up. That felt good, I admitted, my hands trembling slightly. It gets better, David said. Look at Jessica. Across the street, Jessica had stopped walking. She was yelling at Mark. She shoved him. Mark shoved her back. She threw her purse at him. Trouble in paradise, David mused. When the money runs out, the romance usually follows about 5 seconds later. Part 10, The Mother-in-Law and the Collapse, approximate 1200 words, we went back to our hotel. I was exhausted, but adrenaline kept me going. An hour later, my phone rang again. It wasn't Mark. It was Eleanor. My mother-in-law. The woman who had treated me like hired help for a decade. The woman who had told me on my wedding day that Mark was settling. Put it on speaker, David said, pouring us both a glass of wine. Hello, Eleanor, I said. Sarah Jenkins. Her voice was a shrill screech. What on earth do you think you are doing? Mark just called me in a panic. He says you've stranded him in Paris without a penny. How dare you? He is your husband. He is also Jessica's boyfriend, apparently, I said. Did he mention that part? Or did he leave out the fact that he took her on our anniversary trip? Oh, stop being so dramatic, Eleanor scoffed. Men have needs, Sarah. If you were a better wife, if you took care of yourself like Jessica does, maybe he wouldn't wander. That is no excuse to cut off his finances. You are endangering his life. I looked at the phone in disbelief. Even now, confronted with her son's infidelity, she blamed me. Eleanor, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous low. Mark didn't just cheat. He stole. He stole from me. He stole from the bakery. He committed bank fraud. That's a felony. He's not a victim, he's a criminal. Nonsense. Eleanor shouted. Mark is a financial genius. He was investing your money. He spent it on a villa for Jessica. I yelled back. And by the way, Eleanor, since you love Jessica so much, you should know that she's currently screaming at your son on a street corner because he can't buy her dinner. They deserve each other. I am going to wire him money immediately, Eleanor declared. And when he gets back, he is going to divorce you, and we will take that bakery. Mark told me the legal loopholes. You'll be left with nothing. Go ahead and wire him money, I said. But you should know, the FBI is monitoring his accounts now. Any large transfer will be flagged as potential money laundering or aiding a fugitive. Do you want to be an accomplice, Eleanor? Do you want to go to prison at 70 years old? There was silence on the other end. I don't believe you, she stammered, but the confidence was gone. Turn on the news in a few days, I said. And Eleanor? Don't call me again. If you do, I'll add harassment to the list of charges I'm filing. I hung up. David looked at me with genuine admiration. Remind me never to cross you, Sarah. She pushed me too far, I said, rubbing my face. They all did. That evening, the final blow landed. David received a text from Jessica. David. Baby. Please. I made a huge mistake. Mark, he's crazy. He lied to me. He told me he was leaving you, that he had millions. He's broke, David. He's a loser. I'm at the airport. I used my emergency cash to buy a standby ticket home. Please, can I come home? We can talk. I love you. David read the text out loud. He looked at it for a long moment. What are you going to do? I asked. David typed a reply. I changed the locks. Your things are in a storage unit. The key is with my lawyer. Do not come to the house. We are done. He hit send. Then he blocked her number. And that, David said, closing his phone, is how you take out the trash. Part 11, Justice Served Cold, approximate 1,000 words. We flew back to Seattle 2 days later. We didn't fly with Mark and Jessica. We didn't even see them. When we landed, the reality of the legal battle set in. But unlike before, I wasn't afraid. I had David. I had a team of lawyers he had recommended. And most importantly, I had the truth. Mark returned a day later. He tried to come to the house. I was ready. I had hired a private security guard to stand at the gate. When Mark's Uber pulled up, the guard stopped him. Mr. Jenkins? You are not permitted on the property. This is my house. Mark screamed, looking disheveled and unshaven. Sarah! Open the damn gate. I walked out onto the porch. I held up a piece of paper. A restraining order. You don't live here anymore, Mark, I called out. And you don't own this house. The bank is reviewing the fraudulent mortgage. Until then, you are to stay 500 feet away from me and the bakery. Where am I supposed to go? He wailed. He looked broken. The arrogance was completely gone. I hear Eleanor has a pull-out couch, I said. The legal proceedings took 6 months. It was a bloodbath for Mark. David's forensic accountant found everything. Mark had been running a Ponzi scheme with his investment fund. He had been using new client money to pay off old clients, and siphoning the rest to fund his lifestyle. The fraud against me was just the tip of the iceberg. Mark was arrested 3 weeks after we returned from Paris. I watched it on the local news. He was led out of his office in handcuffs, his jacket over his head to hide his face. The charges: wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. He faced 20 years. He took a plea deal for 8. Jessica didn't get off scot-free either. While she wasn't charged criminally, her reputation was destroyed. In the divorce, David enforced their prenuptial agreement strictly. Because of the proven infidelity, thanks to our video in Paris, she got nothing. No alimony. No house. She had to move back in with her parents and get a job as a receptionist at a dental office. I got my bakery back. It took a lot of legal wrangling to clear the fraudulent lien, but because I could prove the signature was forged and I had reported it immediately, the bank had to absorb the loss, not me. Part 12, Rebirth, the Sweetest Victory, approximate 800 words. It has been a year since that day in Paris. My life looks very different now. The divorce was finalized last month. I took back my maiden name. I am Sarah Miller again. Legacy Loaves is booming. After the story came out locally, without the gritty details, just the triumph, people flocked to support the bakery. We've opened 2 new locations. I hired a manager to handle the day-to-day operations so I can focus on what I love, baking. And David? We didn't jump into a romance. That would have been too cliché, and honestly, we both needed time to heal. We were 2 wounded people who had found each other in a war zone. But we stayed close. We met for coffee every Sunday. We talked about business, about life, about everything except our exes. 6 months ago, David asked me to dinner. Not to discuss legal strategy. Not to vent. Just dinner. We went to a small Italian place downtown. No Ritz. No champagne. Just good pasta and wine. You look happy, he told me that night. I am, I smiled. I feel light. For the first time in 10 years, I don't feel like I have to shrink myself to fit into someone else's life. You shouldn't ever shrink, David said, reaching across the table to take my hand. You take up space, Sarah. And it's beautiful. We are taking it slow. But it's good. It's real. It's built on respect, not illusions. Sometimes, I think about Mark. I hear he's working in the prison library. Eleanor had to sell her house to pay for his legal defense, which failed. She lives in a small condo now and doesn't call anyone. I don't hate them anymore. Hate takes too much energy. I just feel a distant pity. They had everything, or at least, the opportunity for everything, and they threw it away for a cheap thrill and a villa they couldn't afford. I look at the photo on my wall. It's not a picture of Mark. It's a picture of me and David, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, soaking wet from the rain, holding cheap umbrellas we bought from a street vendor, eating crepes. We are laughing. Genuine, belly-aching laughter. That was the real Paris. Not the Ritz. Not the first-class seats. But the moment we realized we had survived the storm and were still standing. The best revenge isn't ruining them. It's outliving their influence on your happiness. So, to anyone watching this who feels stuck, who feels like they are being underestimated or betrayed, keep your receipts. Trust your gut. And remember, sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is the thing that forces you to kick down the door and demand what you are worth. I'm Sarah. Thanks for listening to my story.